Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Tiny Brains podcast. I'm Kevin Joyce, CEO at Tiny Brains, and with me, as ever, is Peter Graham, the Brigadier of Brains at Tiny
Well,
Brains.
well remembered. Thank you, Kev. Thank you. Hello all.
Yeah. So, what we do on this podcast, if you're new here, is we take a look at the biggest stories in XR from the previous week, and we're going to start with a pretty big one. Niantic, the are they creators? The champions, the studio behind kind of Pokemon Go, the ones that run it at least, um, they have decided to sell off their gaming division.
Yeah. This was something we heard about a few weeks. There were rumors and things circulating from certain reports that they were looking at selling off their gaming division. And then last week they confirmed it, and they have sold it to Scopely, who are a mobile games company. They've sold it for $3.5 billion. So bye
Not
bye.
small change.
Not small change whatsoever. So what they plan to do with that, I don't know. But yes, that means that Niantic are no more in the AR gaming business.
So there's a few key points here. Firstly, do not fear that the team that are developing Pokemon Go are going to Scopely. It's not just buying the rights to it or anything like that. They have bought the gaming division. Okay. So the same developers that you trust with your Pokemon inexperience in, or Monster Hunter, or Pikmin, or many of these games, will still be working on those titles by and large. There may be some people leaving or whatever else, but predominantly those teams are going wholesale to Scopely. Scopely is the company, for those of you who don't know, they're responsible for titles like Monopoly Go. Now, there are some people that are like, oh no, more paywalls, blah, 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 blah. But the general consensus for many Scopely titles is yes, there are quite intrusive paywalls, but it is still entirely possible to play the game without having to spend any money. Whether you would do that or whether you would get invested in your titles is entirely up to you. But the fears of significant changes aren't as great as you might imagine. Thirdly, from a business side, I am no business guru, but in my mind, if you have a department that is clearly making significant amount of money, why would you sell off that department? Somebody tell me why Niantic made this decision to sell off an incredibly profitable department. Maybe it's only Pokemon Go that is the one that's incredibly profitable, but
Yeah.
Pokemon Go is. So why would they choose to sell that? I don't know. Somebody at Niantic hit me up.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to second guess why they've sold that division. I wouldn't imagine that they were losing money hand over fist, but maybe it's because they've wanted to go in a new direction. And at the same time, as selling off the gaming division, they have announced a new spin-off company, which I'm sure you've heard about, Kev, called Niantic Spatial, which is going to fuse all their geospatial uh, experience with AI. Because, of course, there's going to be an AI announcement in there as well.
And a lot of the data they've got for spatial has come from players of Pokemon Go. So again, I I don't know, guys. I don't know. Tell me, please.
Well, hopefully Scopely aren't, they're not going to annoy the millions and upon millions of Pokemon Go players out there and go, right, we're going to change all this and like really upend it all when
I wouldn't imagine so with a game that profitable. Don't fix what isn't broken.
exactly.
There's a lot of things in Pokemon Go that are broken, but making money is not one of them.
Well, too right.
And I say that as a daily player, everybody. I still play Pokemon Go every single day.
Oh, very fair.
Anyway,
I don't.
thank you. Um, Moving on, we have some sad news for the VR scene for VR. Uh, I don't know, the experienced VR players, people who've been playing VR for a while. Sad news time.
Veterans. Yeah, that's it. It is a sad day. It seems to be every week that we announce we'll talk about at least one little sad bit of news for the VR industry. And for last week, it was Phaser Lock Interactive have announced that they are going to shut their doors. Now, these are guys probably most well known recently for Primal Hunt, which is a dinosaur kind of hunting game that they released a couple of years ago in 2023. For us old farts like me and Kev, we will know them back from the 2016 days when they released games like Final Assault and Final Approach. These were RTS games, and final approach I really enjoyed, and it was one of those games that really made a mark in those early years. But we haven't heard a great deal from Phaserlock since, yeah, apart from Primal Hunt.
This is a studio that I've known quite well since my days as a journalist reporting on them. I've met the co-founders many times, and I was a fan of the studio. But you've got to admit, 2 years without a launch, I would assume in that period they were trying to find funding and building out a new title, and it just didn't land. So it's a sad day because they were a studio that was doing interesting things in VR. They were an experienced studio with several launches under their belt, and for VR as a medium, they were a good thing, a good studio for us to have. So yeah, sad day. We'll miss you, Phaserlock.
We will indeed, yes. It's always sad to see one of the old guard go.
Moving on though, we have another old guard of VR.
Yes, well, coming back now. Insomniac aren't really in the VR space anymore, but they used to be. And their old games, including Edge of Nowhere, Stormland, and Feral Rights, used to be very popular games on Meta's PC VR platform. And then they weren't on there for quite a while, but now they have returned. Insomniac have announced that yes, those three games are back on the PC VR section, so you don't search for it on the Quest section because you won't find them. On the PC VR section of the Horizon store, you'll find those games back in, and also the Unspoken will be coming as well. They have announced it's not there yet, but the Unspoken will be coming back as well, which is
Now,
good.
if I recall correctly, Edge of Nowhere was a launch title for the original Oculus Rift CV1,
I think you might be right. Yes. Yeah.
and I'm sure there was a second from Insomniac. Unspoken came later.
Yes.
Feral Rights, that was Insomniac as well, right?
Yeah, that's the one I've just
Oh,
mentioned. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was
Well, that
later.
was
What was
an
the other one
early
you just mentioned?
title, but I think Stormland was possibly the most recent game that's come.
Stormlands came later. Yeah, now Stormlands, I think, was a great experience.
Oh,
It
I
was,
agree.
yeah, super enjoyed Stormlands. If you've got a PC that can run it and you've got a Quest headset, go ahead and use Airlink and get playing because it's super good.
That's a good bit of news then.
And another good bit of news we have if you're a fan of Metallica.
If you are a fan of Metallica, this is I am a fan of Metallica. I'm not a fan of this announcement because Metallica is coming to Apple Vision Pro. There's a new VR, well, immersive experience. Can't use the word VR with Apple Vision Pro. A new immersive concert experience that launched on Friday. And essentially, Apple recorded Metallica during one of their concerts. It was a concert in Mexico City for their M72 tour. Apple took along 14 of their immersive spatial cameras and recorded the entire event for you to watch on your Vision Pro, which is, from the trailer, it looks cool. And especially if you're a Metallica fan, it's just a bit of a shame that because it's AVP exclusive, I don't think many people are going to be able to have access. Many Metallica fans aren't going to be able to watch it, let's say, including me.
Well, I do like my rock and or metal, but I'm not the biggest Metallica fan in the world. So yeah, maybe I'll give it a look at some point. But yeah.
Or if you're not going to buy an Apple Vision Pro, you can always reserve a demo at one of the Apple stores, and they'll actually show you one of the uh, sets from the experience. So you can
All
always
right. Okay.
try that.
So there's going to be a queue of black t-shirts with Metallica blazoned all across them outside every Apple store the next week.
Quite possibly.
Okay, so rounding up with some more gaming news. We always finish on a game. So here's another one.
Yes, this is coming from one of our local devs, XR Games, up in Leeds. They have announced a new rhythm action game called Beatable. Now, what does this involve, you may ask? Well, this is actually using hand tracking and your own table. So rather than an air guitar or trying to wave your arms with the controllers, instead you're tapping away on your table. Kind of like, you're doing it using a piano.
Kind of like Let's Tap for the Wii. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that. Okay.
So Let's Tap for the Wii was a game. If I recall, it was from someone famous at Sega. Anyway, might have even been Yuji Naka. I can't remember. Google it and let me know. But basically, this was a game which came in a big box, and you put your box on the table and the Wii remote on top of it, and then you tap the box in the rhythm, and it would detect the motion in the Wii remote. Cool stuff.
Okay, fair enough.
Um, didn't succeed. Wasn't that popular, but it was a great idea. And this seems to be taking it one stage further. The big question I have is, I'm sure on this podcast we reported about how XR games are now skeleton stuff.
We did the end, well, towards the end of 2024, around the time that XR Games launched Starship Troopers Continuum, they announced they were getting rid of quite a few staff members, and they were also delaying another game called, you might have heard of it, called a Zombie Army VR. Yes, we were
Rings a
waiting.
bell?
Rings a bell. We were waiting for that one, so we were kind of expecting XR Games to announce something to do with that. But no, we've got Beatable instead, which is coming out to quite Meta onto Meta Quest on the 10th of April. So
Which
I
is
don't know.
soon.
Well, yeah, very soon. So I don't know whether they've gone on different tangents or this has been brewing for a little while, but there we go. So hopefully it's going to be a decent rhythm action game because I know Starship Troopers didn't exactly land very well, and nor did their other game around that sort of time, Hitman 3 VR Reloaded. That wasn't well received. So hopefully this one will be you know back up to their previous standards. If you remember Zombieland, Headshot Fever. That was a good game.
Yeah, XR Games is another studio that, while they've not been around as long as Phaserlock, they have been around a while. And they are a very big studio here in the UK. So we would like to see them be around a bit longer. So
Exactly.
keep going. Don't mess this one up. Let's get Beatable out there. Hopefully it's good, and hopefully we can recommend it in a few weeks' time.
We'll see.
So that's it. That's all for this week. It is GDC week. GDC is upon us. So yeah, I imagine lots of you will be keen with anticipation to discover what we learn at the show floor. We're in San Francisco, so if you want to meet with us, feel free to drop me a line. And yeah, we'll see you again next. If I don't see you at GDC, we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much, everybody.